NFL free agency, for the most part, is over. The NFL draft is over, and the NFL schedule has been released. Today, I'm going to make my predictions, still early predictions, but current predictions for the 2021 NFL season. Make sure to subscribe and like this video, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs still being on the Bills maintains their spot as contenders for the Super Bowl. This offense is going to put up a lot of points, and it's going to be one of the most explosive units in the NFL due to the arm, the special qualities that Josh Allen has, Stefon Diggs being one of the best receivers in the NFL, and this offense being basically the same unit it was last season. The defensive line still lacks quality, in my opinion, but Gregory Rousseau in the draft will help. I do think Buffalo will slightly regress in 2021 due to the added threat of the Patriots in that division. I have Buffalo going 11-6, finishing second in the AFC East and fifth in the AFC as the top wild card. The Patriots are a team that is going to be much better in 2021. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith as a tight end duo is going to create mismatched nightmares for opposing defenses. Cam Newton with these weapons is going to perform much better. This offensive line is still elite, and I expect this defense to maybe be the best defense in the NFL. I think Bill Belichick gets this team back to the top of the AFC East at 12-5, and I have them as the third seed in the AFC. The Miami Dolphins are a team that a lot of people are hyping up right now, but I'm not quite on the train. I still think Tua isn't really the guy. I don't see a lot of special qualities to him. I still think this offensive line is very weak. I did really like what they did at receiver, and I do think their defense has a lot of talent, but the lack of quarterback play being good and the poor offensive line holds this team back from being a playoff team, in my opinion. Miami regresses from 10-6 in 2020 to 8-9 in 2021, finishes third in the AFC East and 10th in the AFC. For the first time in a while, I think the Jets have a franchise quarterback. I am bought in on Zach Wilson, and I think he's going to be a franchise quarterback for the Jets. Unfortunately, I just don't think he has enough surrounding him right now that can make the Jets a playoff threat this year. I did like what they did this offseason, adding Corey Davis, drafting Elijah Moore. They have solid receivers. I liked how Mekhi Becton played in his rookie year. And their defense still has several playmakers, such as Marcus May and Quinnen Williams. And their defensive line in general is really good. Not sure how good of a coach Robert Saleh is, but in this really tough division, the highest I can see the Jets do is 7-10. I have them at 6-11, 4th in the AFC East, and 12th in the AFC. The Ravens' plan this offseason was to attack their wide receiving core, which was the weakness of the team last season. They did this by adding Sammy Watkins in free agency and Rashad Bateman in the draft. The offensive line, however, got worse, in my opinion. Despite the Kevin Zeitler ad, they lost Orlando Brown, which is huge because he was their only good tackle last season, with Ronnie Stanley being hurt. How good Ronnie Stanley will be remains to be seen. I love Lamar. I think he's an elite quarterback, and I really like their secondary and interior defensive line, but the linebacker core and edge rush has questions. Overall, the Ravens are going to be a playoff team, but I don't think that this team is quite in contender status. I have the Ravens at 10-7, second in the AFC North, and seventh in the AFC. The Cincinnati Bengals are going to be very fun to watch. I think the Bengals with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, their passing game is going to be electric, man. Joe Mixon at running back as well. The offensive line, though it got a little better, is still one of the worst in the league. And the defense, I'm just not really sold on it being a good unit at all. So the Bengals are a team that I think will be very competitive in a lot of games and will put up points, but I just don't think they'll be good enough defensively or at head coach to win many of these games. I have the Bengals at 5-12, fourth in the AFC North, and 14th in the AFC. The Browns are a team that can legitimately win the Super Bowl. When was the last time people said that? Cleveland has the best offensive line in football. They have the best running back duo in football. They have a very good receiving duo. They have Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, added John Johnson, significantly improved their secondary, as well as adding Jadeveon Clowney and JOK in free agency and the draft, improving both their edge rush and linebacking core. It really falls upon how good Baker Mayfield can be if this team can truly compete for a Super Bowl and legitimately win one. I happen to think Baker Mayfield will be good, so I have the Browns at 13-4, first in the AFC North and second in the AFC. The Steelers are a team that is just due for regression in 2021. This is a team that had a very easy schedule last season and went 7-2 in one-possession games. To expect that to happen again is completely unfair. Ben Roethlisberger is only getting older. I think as the year goes on, he's going to get worse because his arm just isn't there, in my opinion. The receiving core is solid, but nobody really scares you. I don't care how good Najee Harris is. This offensive line is bad. Defensively, they have a really good front seven, but the cornerback core is fairly shaky. And I think the Steelers are due for their first season with a losing record under Mike Tomlin. I have the Steelers regressing all the way to 7-10, finishing third in the AFC North and finishing 11th in the AFC. I'll make this one quick. No Deshaun Watson, no J.J. Watt, no Will Fuller. Several key flaws on both sides of the ball. Rookie head coach. The Texans, even in the worst division in the NFL, aren't going to be any good and may not even win a game. I have the Texans at 1-16, fourth in the AFC South, and 16th in the AFC. The Indianapolis Colts, in my opinion, are just kind of average. They added Carson Wentz in place for Phillip Rivers. I don't think that's a huge upgrade like a lot of Colts fans seem to think. I really like the run game and offensive line, but the passing targets are below average. The defense is good, but I don't think it's elite, and I don't think it'll carry this team to a lot of wins. The Colts, I just think will be kind of average this season. I have them at 8-9, finishing second in the AFC South and 8th in the AFC, just missing out on the division crown. The Jags are a team that can win this division that a lot of people aren't talking about as division champions. Trevor Lawrence is my favorite quarterback of this draft. James Robinson was a stud last season at running back. Their offensive line's underrated, and they have some sneaky defensive talent that is just waiting to show out and break out. Urban Meyer is a rookie head coach, but he was one of my favorite hires of any head coaching hires this offseason. I still think Jacksonville's a little young to fully predict them to win this division, but don't be shocked if they do. I think the Jags go 6-11, finish third in the AFC South, and 13th in the AFC. The Titans have the best offense in this division. Ryan Tannehill, without Deshaun Watson, is the best quarterback in this division, and he clearly was last season of any of the four that are currently in this division. Derrick Henry is a beast. A.J. Brown is a beast. I think their losses this offseason offensively in terms of personnel are being overrated. I don't think Corey Davis was a huge factor to this team. He only had one good season. This offensive line adds back Taylor Lewan, who was out for parts of last season with injury. He's a stud. This offensive line is good. And this defense has players. They added Autry from Indy, which I think was an under-the-radar ad. They still have Jeffrey Simmons. They still have Kevin Byard. They still have Jayon Brown. They have playmakers defensively that I think will make them better than they were last season defensively. I am worried about Arthur Smith and Dean Pease both now being in Atlanta, but I still think the Titans are going to be able to reclaim the AFC South just as they did last season. I have them at 9-8, first in the AFC South and fourth in the AFC. The Broncos' record hinges entirely upon how good their quarterback is, whether it's Bridgewater or Locke. It hinges upon that because the rest of the roster is ready to win. Melvin Gordon is a solid running back. Their receivers consist of Sutton, Hamler, Judy, Patrick. Solid depth, good core. Noah Fant, underrated tight end. Solid offensive line, very good front seven. Really good secondary now with Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons is decent. They also have Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller, and they drafted Patrick Surtain, so their cornerbacks are set. It really just depends on if their quarterback play is good or not. I don't think it'll be that good because I'm not a huge Locke or Bridgewater guy, so I have the Broncos at 8-9, finishing third in the AFC West and ninth in the AFC. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. We know they're going to be really good. We know they're going to win this division. We know that they'll probably be in the AFC Championship. It really just depends on if they can get back to and win this time in the Super Bowl. They completely revamped their offensive line. It's much improved. They still have Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid, Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu. A really underrated secondary with L'Jarius Sneed, who I think may have a really scary year at corner. This team is stacked. They have really good coaches. They have a lot of superstars, and they improved what was their undoing in last year's Super Bowl. I think the Chiefs go 14-3, finish first in the AFC West, and are the top seed in the AFC, getting the first round bye. The Chargers are what a lot of people think will be this year's breakout team, and I can see why. Justin Herbert was really good last season. I think his statistics may decline a little bit this year, but I actually think as a player he'll be better. Austin Eckler is a good running back. They have good receivers. They significantly improved their offensive line with Lindsley and Slater in free agency and the draft, as well as Brian Bulaga coming back from injury. Defensively, they aren't as talented as they've been in years past, but with Brandon Staley as the head coach, he's a guy that I really respect and highly rate as a defensive mind, and I think he'll elevate the talent on this defense to play better than maybe they should. I think the Chargers go 10-7, finish second in the AFC West, and finish sixth in the AFC, making the playoffs. The Raiders are a disaster. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, they don't know what they're doing. Save Derek Carr, please. Darren Waller, you're awesome. They completely destroyed their offensive line, which was one of their strongest points. They improved their front, I guess, but their secondary is still one of the worst, if not the worst, in the NFL. They don't really have many receivers that scare me, if any. And Josh Jacobs is just a solid running back. So the Raiders are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL with a worse offense and slightly better defense that's still really bad. I have the Raiders going 4-13, finishing 4th in the AFC West and 15th in the AFC. Now over in the NFC, we're starting with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott is the new but old man, I guess, coming in at quarterback. He got paid a lot. But unfortunately for him, even though I think the Cowboys' offense is going to be really explosive, if their offensive line's able to stay healthy, if Dak's able to stay healthy, the receiving core is really good, Cowboys' offense is really good. I don't trust this defense at all. I think the defensive line is overrated by Cowboys fans. I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is that elite player that he maybe once was. The linebacking core is decent. I like the Micah Parsons pick. Leighton Vander Esch is good, but it seems like he's never on the field. Jalen Smith has awareness issues, and the secondary is also fairly weak. I don't like Dan Quinn. I was a Falcons fan. I've experienced him. Great guy, not a great defensive mind. And Mike McCarthy is a mediocre coach. I think the Giants and Washington are much more complete teams than Dallas, and Dallas will be really fun, but ultimately won't win all that many games. I have them at 7-10, finishing 3rd in the NFC East and 12th in the NFC. The Giants are a team that has put all of the pressure on Daniel Jones to succeed, or they're going to look for a new quarterback. Kenny Golladay in, Kyle Rudolph in, Saquon Barkley back. Offense revamped with many weapons. This offense is solely dependent on how good Daniel Jones is. If he's good, this offense is going to be pretty good. Defensively, secondary is elite. James Bradbury, Adoree Jackson, Logan Ryan. It comes down to the edge rushers if this defense can actually be elite as a whole. I don't rate the edge rushers really that highly, but I do really like Leonard Williams, and I think Blake Martinez had a pretty solid year last year at linebacker. So the Giants are a team that is gonna compete for a playoff spot and compete for this division. I have them just missing out on both at 9-8, finishing 2nd in the NFC East and 8th in the NFC. The Eagles are in rebuild mode, and they're trying to see how good Jalen Hurts is this year. This team's not going to be very good. They're in a weird identity of caught between two eras. Their next era and the Super Bowl winners era. Offensive line is still solid. Fletcher Cox is still a beast, but their secondary, their linebacking core, their weapons all are not very good. So the Eagles are pretty clearly the worst team in this division and are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. I have them at 5-12, 4th in the NFC East and 15th in the NFC. Washington's roster is really talented. Gibson, underrated running back. Logan Thomas, underrated tight end. Underrated offensive line. McLaurin and Samuel, really good receiver duo. Maybe the best defense in football. I think you can argue that. The question that everybody brings up is quarterback. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be solid, and I think that's enough to get Washington to 10 wins and get them this division crown for the second year running. I have Washington going 10-7, finishing 1st in the NFC East and 4th in the NFC. I know Bears fans are really excited about the Justin Fields pick, but I don't think he's in really a position to succeed with them. This offensive line, though it improved in the draft with Tevin Jenkins, still isn't great. Robinson and Mooney is a solid duo, and Montgomery is solid. This offense has some talent. It's just not a very great offense, I don't think, with a lot of elite talent, and I'm not a fan of Matt Nagy. Defense, really good in the front seven, very questionable in the secondary, will be a borderline top 10 unit. The Bears, in my opinion, are gonna be a regression candidate this season. I have them at 5-12, third in the NFC North, and 14th in the NFC. We know the Lions won't be good. Even though I liked what they did in the draft with the Super Bowl pick, they really addressed their offensive line, making it an actually pretty decent unit. Without Stafford, they're really hopeless in winning many games. The Lions will go 2-15, finish fourth in the NFC North, and finish as the last place team in 16th as in the NFC. As long as Rodgers plays for the Packers, they're going to be really good. Rodgers, for me, is the best quarterback in the NFL. Aaron Jones, top 7 running back. Devontae Adams, maybe the best receiver. We know how talented this team is. Jair Alexander is a stud. Za'Darius Smith is a stud. Offensive line, even though it lost Corey Linsley, still pretty good. I really want to just see if this team is able to replicate how good they were last season. But this team has very few questions outside of chemistry between quarterback and front office. The Packers, I think, go 13-4, finished first in the NFC North once again, and finished as the second seed in the NFC. The Vikings are a team that should be getting a lot more hype than they are right now. Kirk Cousins is a solid quarterback. He gets a lot of hate, but he is solid. Dalvin Cook, stud at running back, great receiver duo. Offensive line significantly improved in the draft with Davis and Darrisaw. Defensive line going from one of the worst in the league last year to one of the best this year with the additions of Hunter, Pierce, and Tomlinson, either back from injury, COVID, or free agency. The secondary is young at corner, but Harrison Smith is still a superstar at free safety, and I respect and like Mike Zimmer as a coach, and I think he has proven that he is a winner at head coach. So the Vikings I have going 11-6, finishing second in the NFC North, and as the 5th seed in the NFC, as the top wildcard. Much like the Cowboys, the Falcons are all offense, no defense. Matt Ryan, top 10 quarterback, Julio Jones, if he does play there, and Calvin Ridley are the best receiving duo in the NFL. Kyle Pitts was, in my opinion, the best player in the draft. The Falcons have a really good quarterback and excellent weapons, potentially the best in the NFL. With Arthur Smith now there as head coach, calling the offensive plays, I do think the Falcons will have much better play calling than they've had the past few seasons. The offensive line, though, is a huge question mark. I did like what they did in the draft with Jalen Mayfield, but still question marks there. And defensively, really like Grady Jarrett, really like Deion Jones. The rest of it is pretty suspect at safety, at in the interior, and on the edge. The Falcons I have at 8-9, finishing 3rd in the NFC South and 11th in the NFC. Carolina really just depends on Sam Darnold because the rest of this roster is actually pretty good. Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in the league, in my opinion. Receiving duo of Moore and Anderson is good. Offensive line's okay. The front seven's really scary with Burns, Brown, now Reddick. That's a scary front seven. Dante Jackson is a solid corner. I do think J.C. Horn is going to have a solid rookie season. Jerry McChin is a very good safety. So Carolina really just depends on if Darnold is able to perform or not. I do think Darnold's going to have his best career season, but I don't think it'll be quite enough to get this team into the playoff conversation. Carolina goes 7-10, finishes 4th in a very tough NFC South, and finishes 13th in the NFC. The Saints have been right in the thick of things in Super Bowl contention over the last 4 years. I don't expect them to contend for a Super Bowl this year. Combine the loss of Drew Brees with the loss of a lot of depth and a weaker special teams than they've had in years past. I just don't think that this team has enough receivers outside of Michael Thomas to make Jameis a significant upgrade from Breeze. Don't get me wrong, really love Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. Offensive line's elite. Sean Payton's elite. Cameron Jordan still really good. Demario Davis still really good. This team has a lot of elite players. They just lack the depth that they once had, and with a very tough schedule, I just don't see this team quite being the contender they used to be. The Saints go 9-8, finish second in the division, and finish 10th in the NFC. The Bucs are the Super Bowl champs and are one of the most talented teams I've seen coming into a season. They return everybody, legitimately everybody, and are just going to have more continuity as well as having a fairly easy schedule if you really look at it. I think Tampa goes 14-3, finishes first in the NFC South, finishes first in the NFC, gets the bye, and enters the playoffs Super Bowl favorites. The Cardinals have a lot of talent. Kyler Murray might be a top 10 quarterback by the end of this season. DeAndre Hopkins, stud receiver. They improved their offensive line drastically this offseason, improved their front seven drastically. Even though their secondary has questions, there is still definitely talent there with Budda Baker at safety and Byron Murphy at corner. And their linebacking core with Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins has a lot of potential. It really comes down to if you think Cliff Kingsbury is an adequate coach, and I honestly am not completely sure if he even is that. But I think the Cards are going to be a little better than they were last year, and I think even in such a tough division, that's going to be good enough to get them that final NFC wildcard spot. Arizona goes 9-8, finishes third in the NFC West, and finishes seventh in the NFC. While everybody looks at the Matthew Stafford trade, and rightly so, and crowns the Rams as Tampa's biggest threat in the NFC, everybody's kind of ignoring some of their losses, such as Austin Blythe in the interior, who was quietly good for them last season and improved their offensive line. John Johnson, their stud safety. Troy Hill, their corner, who's very good for them. The Rams have had some losses on both sides of the ball, personnel-wise, that will affect them. They also lost Brandon Staley as their defensive coordinator, which will definitely affect them and hurt the performance of their role players that were oh so good for them last season defensively. I think Stafford's going to have a big statistical year, but I'm not sure if his fit is truly the best in this offense. I think this offensive line is going to show its age and begin to regress. And I don't think the Rams defense is going to be nearly as good as it was last season. The Rams go 9-8, finish a shocking bottom of the NFC West in fourth, and miss the playoffs, finishing ninth in the NFC. The Niners are going to be the team that goes from worst to first in 2021. It seems that there is one every year, and I think it's the Niners this year. This is still one of the best rosters in the NFL. George Kittle improves both their offensive line and receiving core. The receiving duo is good. Raheem Mostert has proved that with Kyle Shanahan, he can be productive. Nick Bosa, excellent edge rusher. Fred Warner, elite linebacker core. I think the secondary is a little underrated right now. And overall, even if the quarterback play is average, I do think it'll be good enough to get this team wins as it was in 2019. I think the 49ers go 12-5, finish first in a very tough NFC West, and finish as the third seed in the NFC. It's kind of disrespectful to say the Seahawks won't make the playoffs when it seems they always do. Russell Wilson, he is there, and he is a top 6 quarterback. With DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, we know this offense is going to be explosive. Chris Carson, everyone forgets about him. He's a very good running back, and this offensive line did improve in free agency. They also improved their edge rush in free agency with Kerry Hyder and Aldon Smith added. with Carlos Dunlap already there, who really improved their defense last season. Their safety duo is excellent with Adams and Diggs, and even if the corners are a huge concern, I don't think they necessarily mean a ton in their defense compared to other defenses such as New England or Miami. I think the Seahawks finished 10-7, finished second in the NFC West, and finished as the 6th seed in the NFC, making the playoffs once again.